We are live on the Facebooks, bitches. Live, but no, got a lure in the water, but nobody's there yet. Waiting. Live on the YouTube, all good. Live on the Twitch. It's a Twitch. It's the social network for people from the East, the Twitch. Hello, we got a couple people on Facebook, or one person on YouTube. We're gonna give it a couple minutes here, guys. 1 minute, actually. Give it a couple minutes and let people get here as they get here. Rob's in the green room. He's laughing at me already because I changed a couple minutes to 1 minute. Whatever. You don't know nothing, Rob Otto. Also, guys, I couldn't figure out how to mute him for this because having some technical issues. So he's in the cone of silence, the Get Smart cone of silence in the green room. There's nothing the man can do. All right, 4 o'clock. Let's give it 30 more seconds. We got people pouring in the room now, so to speak. Wow. We're going to talk about Mr. Voorhees, one of the icons of the world. Monster Shannon, Richard Woodworth, hello. How does everything sound? I might sound a little muffled. You can probably guess why. But keep an eye on it for us. Dennis Fedor says, hi, Rob. Ollie Kirby from Down Under. So we had a little problem with the audio last week, but I think it is fixed for this week. But we will see how it goes. Let us know. All right, we got people. Let's get started. Let's get this party started. And 3, and 2, and 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monster of the Week. As you can see, I am definitely in the mood for some Jason. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Not only that, but repping the super weapon today. Our first video came out today. It was very, very fun. You can find that over at superweaponband.com. That's what this thing on my forehead is for. It's not that Jason has some strange acting. Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Dennis. Everything sounds pretty good. All right, that's enough of the mask for now. Best $10 I ever spent, not counting my trip to Tijuana. Let's go to what we're talking about today, you guys, is Jason, particularly from Friday the 13th, Part 3, 3D. And as always, what I pimp out on this show at the beginning is something that my guest does, something that I did. This time, something that I did that is closely associated with Friday the 13th would be the book Nocturnal, because there are killers wearing masks in that book. It's pretty bloody, so it's along those lines. And also, are you ready? Hello, Mandy. Hello, Philip. Are you ready for the world premiere? Never before seen anywhere online, anywhere other than the artist's eyes or Rob's eyes. It is the cover of the screenplay that Rob and I wrote together that we've recently submitted to a couple of places, and that is the cover for Mall Pigs. It's like other monster movies, but with a food court. This is our supernatural comedy. The artwork is done by Emily Connell, and she is a San Diego local junkie. And she's great. She did this poster for us. We kind of like it. Oh, a real girl in the house. Everybody's here. So now we'll turn this off, Before I get to Rob, let me tell you what got coming up real quick. Next week, oh my gosh, you guys. Next week, we're going to have, well, hold on. Coming guest. Let's see if this is working. Yeah, that's right. Astronomer Phil Plate, the bad astronomer, the PhD himself. His favorite monster is the giant ants from Them. The week after that, we're going to have Rachel Burks on. Her monster is the Cookie Monster. She is a noted expert on Angela Lansbury Murder, She Wrote. So it's possible Dr. Burks will be telling us how the Cookie Monster is actually a psychopath that murders people and buries them in garbage cans. And then we have on the 3rd of September, actress Rachel True, who's going to be talking about John Carpenter's The Thing. She was scheduled to be on today, but she got a movie and she had to go do that. So hopefully we'll have her then. And then a month from now, author and comic book creator Amanda Diebert, who's going to be talking about Medusa from the OG Clash of the Titans. Great monster, great movie. We seem to be wallowing in 80s and 90s movies here. It's going to be a very good time. But until that happens, ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, let me bring on StorySmack host himself, co-writer of Mall Pigs, Mr. Rob Otto. Hello, Rob. How are you today?
Scott, it is excellent to be here on a Monster of the Week. I'm very excited. I warned you, I had a Jason mask at one point. And where that has gone, I have no idea. I'm a little disappointed. So what I did was I just took one of his weapons of choice from Friday the 13th, Part 3.
Oh, geez.
And I've got my nice, dull axe ready to go. And just in case you say anything too smart, I've got this here. And also, apparently, I don't understand how the internet works. So, but, I got to tell you, Scott, had it occurred to me that Cookie Monster was a choice for Monster of the Week, That would have been my choice. So I got to tell you, Jason Voorhees has now moved to number 2 on my list. And damn it, I wish I would have thought of that. So
it is going to be.
She's a genius. She's a genius.
She was like, "Can I do a Cookie Monster?" I'm like, "You're goddamn right, you can do Cookie Monster."
Darn it.
She is a brilliant, brilliant individual and very, very gifted speaker. So I'm super excited about this. Super excited about all the guests. Next week, of course, be Dr. Phil Plait, Debat Astronomer. He's going to try and tell us that the giant ants from them are not scientifically accurate. I find this to be preposterous.
Whew.
I will argue with him.
He's going to have an argument on his hands from you, buddy.
That's one of my favorite movies. I love that movie. It's wonderful. So, Rob, let us talk about this incredible, incredible man, a mainstay in the world of horror, Mr. Jason Voorhees. Not a PhD, but he should have been a PhD because he's so smart.
He's a pretty hard dude.
He's a pretty hard dude. Definitely, he takes his craft very seriously. Let's go over the basics of this. This movie was released in 1985. It had a budget of, hold on, I had the budget. I lost the budget. Production budget is only $2.2 million. So that was pretty good, even for back then. Opening weekend made $9.5 million, went on to a adjusted domestic box office, adjusted for inflation, of $114 million. So that is
amazing.
staggering profit maker. Some people might look at this movie and think it's schlocky, think it's cheesy. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were cashing in. But what we're really focusing on today, Rob, is the fact that this is the first instance of the mask that has become associated with Jason all the way through the franchise.
Yeah, that's why, you might look at this and say it's odd. Why would they choose the 3rd installment of Friday the 13th instead of the 1st installment? Well, first of all, Jason only appears for about 15 seconds in the 1st installment, and he's just the boy in the lake at that point. So he didn't really become the main character and killer until the 2nd installment. And in that one, he basically wore a burlap sack with an eye hole cut in it the entire time.
Yeah, not as good of a look.
This is the movie. Halfway through, and it's actually more than halfway through, is when he gets that mask. And he gets it from a character, Shelley, who's, geeky, no self-confidence, and feels like he has to continually pull off gags and scare people in order to get people to pay attention to him. Mm-hmm. And one of the things he brings to scare people that weekend is a hockey mask. And after he gets his throat cut by Jason, Jason grabs the mask, and then he wears it for about 30 frickin' years. Yeah. So that's where the mask came from. And that's why we chose the 3rd one, right? Because Jason with a machete and a hockey mask.
That's it.
That's the iconic image. That's the image that everybody thinks of. And it wasn't until this movie that they gave him that iconic image. And what has it been? A dozen movies now? More than 12?
13.
If you count.
I think they've got it to 13.
If you count Freddy versus Jason. I mean, he's lasted for decades. And most of it helps that he's got that iconic mask and that machete.
That really is the Halloween mask. Michael Myers mask is fairly iconic. And the only other horror icon I can compare to Jason that has that longevity would be Freddy Krueger. The hat, the sweater, the gloves. But really, Jason is that mask alone, even a fraction of that mask, tells you exactly what you're going to get. It's like when Samuel L. Jackson was on Snakes on a Plane. And he told everybody, the name of the movie is Snakes on a Plane. You know whether you're going to like this movie before you even show up. When you see the mask, you know it's going to happen. So we're going to talk about the boy in the lake in a second. But first of all, since we are focusing on the mask, let me call the mask back up for everybody here. Great story I uncovered for this. The decision to dress Jason Voorhees in his now signature hockey mask occurred during a lighting check on set. The film's 3D effects supervisor, Martin Sadoff, remember this was a 3D movie, was a hockey fan and supplied a Detroit Red Wings goaltender mask to Miner, the person who was playing Jason. Miner loved the mask, but during test shots found it was too small. Using a technique called vacuform, makeup effects director Doug White enlarged the mask and created a new mold to work with. After White finished the molds, art director Terry Ballard placed the new red triangles on the mask to give it a unique appearance, and holes were also punched into the mask, and the markings were altered, making it different from Sadoff's original template. There were 2 prosthetic masks created for Richard Booker to wear underneath the hockey mask. One mask was comprised of approximately 11 different physical appliances and took 6 hours to apply to Brooker's face. This mask was used for the scenes where the hockey mask was removed. In the scenes where the hockey mask is over the face, a simple head mask was created. This one-piece mask would simply slip over Brooker's head, exposing his face, but not the rest of the head, and then we would have a mask over the top of that. 6 hours to put a hockey mask and 11 different pieces on a guy. That's crazy, but like that, people don't understand the level of detail and level of attention that went into making this movie.
Well, and that, as you mentioned, for where the scenes where he ever revealed what that crazy face underneath looked like. Mm-hmm. So most of the movie, Brooker, and Steve Miner was the director. He wasn't it was Richard Brooker who plays, and honestly, the stunt guy on this was Steve Dash. And they are the ones that play Jason through Friday the 13th Part 3. So mostly it was just a one-piece regular mask, but whenever they showed his face underneath, they had to go through all the extra stuff. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. And to think that it's a Red Wings mask, and we're a couple of kids from Michigan, and that's a pretty cool story, right?
Yeah, it's pretty neat. But you get the impression they knew what they were onto when they started to put. Yeah. They must have put the mask on him. And you almost can see everyone on the movie set when he walks into the light with a mask, probably got the coat and the machete. And I'm going to guess everybody just got chills. It's one of those moments. Remember, nobody had done this before. There wasn't like they copped somebody else. He steps into the light, big guy with the mask on, and everybody just gets chills and like, that's it. No matter how much time it takes, no matter how much we have to spend, we're going to make this work. And they've done a great job at it.
And it's really interesting because Steve Miner is the really connecting thread, the guy who directed number 3, also directed number 2, and he was one of the producers on number 1. So he's the only real common thread from number 1 through number 3.
Okay.
The rest of the way, it's pretty much an entirely different production company on every single movie, because most people kind of do this once and then they go on to real movies after that, right? Yep. So I just got a feeling that the producer that came in on number 4, which was the last chapter, believe it or not, number 4, the last chapter, just saw him at the end of that movie with the hockey mask on and said, well, he's going to look like that the whole movie. Like he just saw it. And like you said, he got that it was an iconic image and you can sell that hockey mask. And you remember all the posters from there on out all had the hockey mask right beneath the name of the movie. That was it. That was the selling point. And from 4 on, that's exactly what they did. And it was because of just the way they wrote the script in number 3. And it's funny to think that, somebody brought one to the set and did a light test on it. Because, well, this kind of looks like somebody's face. Let's just do a light test, me wearing this. Mm-hmm. And the rest is history. They changed the script around. And all of a sudden, you've got this amazing, iconic image that we're still talking about. I mean, the first 3 movies came out in 3 years. It was 81, 82, 83. It was absolutely insane, the production schedule that they must have been on. And yet, 30, 40 years later, we're still talking about it. And you say Jason from Friday the 13th, everybody knows who you're talking about.
You see right what's on the screen right there. And you mentioned that people would do one of these movies, then go on to do other things. Stephen Miner did Friday the 13th Part 2. And then he went on to do Part 3. Then he did House, a great horror movie. House, very fun. Warlock, one of my favorite awful movies in 1985. Came back to do Halloween H2O in 1998. And then everybody loves a giant alligator movie. He did Lake Placid in 1999. The writers for this movie, Martin Kitrosser and Carol Watson. Martin went on to write Kill Bill and Guardians of the Galaxy, has screenwriting credits on that. So huge accomplishments after that. Carol Watson went on to do Friday the 13th, the final chapter. She did Meatballs Part 2, not good, but then she wrote the South Park episode for Pink Eye. So I think that's pretty impressive. Yeah, made up for it. Rob, you were mentioning The Boy in the Lake.
Yeah. I love this story because, the idea of Jason, it was just tacked on to the end. It was just a jump scare at the end of the first movie. The actual killer in the first movie is Jason's mother, Pamela, right? It's Mrs. Voorhees. But the whole story is that she was mad at all the camp counselors because they were screwing around while her boy was drowning in the lake, right? That's the whole impetus of the story, right? So at the end, the final girl out in a boat in the middle of the lake, you think it's over, and then the big jump scare at the end, which again, another innovation that essentially Friday the 13th created that everyone has copied since. But Ari Lehman was just a kid, a child actor at the time. He was working on one, bubblegum movie, same producer as Friday the 13th. So the producer brought him over and said, listen, we need you just for 4 days on set. Can you swim? And the story is in Hollywood. If any director or producer ever asks you if you could do anything, say yes. And then you just have until the next meeting to learn how to do that thing. So Ari is smart. He said, yes, I can swim. And then, so for 4 days. And then he didn't act again. Right? He was a professional a musician. He's a classical and jazz pianist. He did keyboards for reggae artists for decades, including the great Bob Marley, right? And then on a whim, some horror convention on the East Coast invited Ari as the original Jason to show up, as an adult, and people just went freaking nuts.
Yeah.
Right? And Ari's just like, wow, they really dig this character. Right? So then he creates a punk metal rock band named First Jason. And then he tours horror shows playing in this punk metal rock band. I just think it's freaking hilarious. And since then, now that he's an adult, he's picked up a bunch of B and C level horror films over the last 15 years or so. And it's all because of these 4 days in 1979 on the set of a B/C level horror movie that nobody thought would ever do anything. Crazy.
As someone who hopes to do an indie horror movie in the future, that if you can get Ari Lehman to play in the movie, you're like, we'll make a role for you. It doesn't matter.
Oh, absolutely.
Just to be able to say,
that's exactly.
We've got the original Jason. That's going to get you coverage. That's going to get you stories. It's going to be great.
100%.
And you go ahead, Robbie.
Well, then I was just thinking, we move on. So now we've got Jason as an adult, and it's Warrington Gillette, and it was actually Friday the 13th Part 2 that Steve Daskowitz is his real name. They are the ones that really originate the idea of adult Jason. Now, this is what I like most about number 2 and number 3, which is the one we're really talking about. At this point, Jason is not a force of nature, right? He is a regular dude. He's extra strong. He's, pretty stupid and tenacious. But when he gets wounded, he feels it. You see him limping later. I mean, there's a scene in Friday the 13th Part 3 where the last girl knocks over a bookshelf and a bunch of books rain down on him. And just falling books knock him down and stun him for a couple minutes. I mean, can you imagine the force of nature Jason in number 5 or number 8 or number 11? Right. Being knocked over by a couple of books? No. Yes. So he's still kind of a normal dude. And so that starts in number 2. And then it's Richard Brooker in number 3 that really brought the idea of, yep, I'm lumbering. I'm still a thinking man. I mean, there's one point where he catches the girl in the barn and has the thought to put the big chunk of wood there to lock the barn door. He's not just an animal. He's not just a monster. He has some conscious thoughts. And Brooker really brings that to life in Friday the 13th.
And is it in 4 and on where he becomes, as you say, the force of nature?
Yes, because 4, they bring him back to life. He gets struck by lightning and comes back to life in number 4. And now he's like this creature. He's an undead creature. He's not just a regular guy anymore. So it was in 2 and 3 that we get the real Jason before he becomes kind of zombie Jason after that.
Right. And you've also mentioned, and then Ted White picks up from Jason 4, and then we've got a cascade of stars going on from there. And then who's the Jason we're most familiar with?
Kane Hodder is the one that everybody thinks of now. He played it in 4 films, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. And so he's really, and he's a horror icon in and of himself, right? I mean, he played the new version of Leatherface in the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies and stuff. Kane's just a guy that you'll see at horror shows for the rest of his life. And he is a big, hulking, lots of muscles. And he brought the idea of just the unstoppable force. No matter what, he's going to continue walking forward. Kane Hodder really brought that to life. And he's the one that I think a lot of people think of when they think of Jason. But it was a much more human Jason that was in Friday the 13th Part 3 and that started the iconic character.
Got a question from the chat room. Where or when did Jason's superpowers come from or develop? Has this ever been stated? Do we know how he got to be the force of nature and not just an angry kid wearing a mask?
No, they try to come up with something new every time. It's struck by lightning, or it's teleported into outer space, or it's, it's experimented on and brought back to life that way. So they never really explain. I mean, in Jason Goes to Hell, they try to explain that maybe he has a direct connection somehow to the underworld.
Right.
But they never, I mean, come on, man. They made 3 movies in 3 years. All right. They weren't having a lot of long pre-production meetings about, how all of this works. They were just like, well, we could make this for $2.5 million and make $100 million on it. Let's just keep doing that.
And that doesn't even begin to touch merchandising and all the stuff like putting him in all the video games and Mortal Kombat. And
gee, you mean like the mask that you bought? That absolutely money went to the producers of Friday the 13th.
Some mask went to the producers for this thing, and it is fabulous. And is also that is one of the movies that I looked at when I was doing my own marketing for my books. Put out a book called Ancestor. We put that out on April 1st because April 1st is an iconic day. You hear April 1st, you associate it with April Fools. Sticks in your head, when you're supposed to go buy the book. Friday the 13th now almost has zero association with the original concept, which is just a very unlucky day. And now that is almost a brand exclusively to this monster, to the Jason Voorhees.
And almost exclusively, you look back on the release dates of the Friday the 13th movies, they almost all came out on Friday the 13th. I mean, it's just it's the simplest connection to make. Why are we talking about Jason today? Because it's Friday the 13th. Hello. I mean, it just makes absolute perfect sense. Here's the interesting thing though, Scott.
Yep.
Friday the 13th part 3 takes place the day after Friday the 13th part 2.
Okay.
So officially, Friday the 13th part 3 takes place on Saturday the 14th. I would just like to point that out, that it's not actually a Friday the 13th movie.
There is a horror parody called Saturday the 14th.
I know there is. Yep.
And if you guys have not watched it at home, usually I'm like, you got to go watch this movie. You don't got to go watch that movie. I believe it's got Mallory from Family Ties. I'm not entirely sure. But not the best of the horror parodies that are out there. And so now, Rob, we're talking like 13 movies. This has become one of the most iconic monsters. And we picked 3 because this is where he became an icon. Friday the 13th made a ton of money. Friday the 13th 2 made a ton of movie. But this movie's the reason we went on to have this icon for so long. So what else can you tell us about Mr. Jason? And what do you say? What's made him endure so much?
The funny thing is, I think part of it is that frickin' mask. I mean, there's just something. It is so recognizable, right? Plus, they figured it out. So Halloween, is considered one of the really first good slasher movies, right? Friday the 13th comes out not long after that. And literally, they put a poster out for Friday the 13th before they even had a script, before they even had a story. They're just like, if Halloween's good, what's the next scariest day? Mm-hmm. Friday the 13th. Okay. We'll tell them we'll release it next summer on Friday the 13th. Okay, now let's figure out how to make a movie about it, right? So, but there's the combination of everybody, especially Americans. I don't know if it's as international as it is to us Americans, but it's something about Friday the 13th. Right. And then you add to that the iconic character. I'm telling you, if they do not put him in the mask in number 3, I don't know that we're still talking about him 40 years later. Right. If he's still wearing the burlap sack on his head and just feels like a lost redneck who's been living in the woods next to a summer camp for 40 years, I'm not sure we're still talking about him. So it's a combination of the Friday the 13th, that iconic mask, and then the formula, right? We're going to have a bunch of good-looking people. Mm-hmm. We're going to have gratuitous nudity. Yep. We are going to show in detail things happening and poking through the bodies of those really good-looking people. Yep. And then there's going to be one girl at the end who saves the day. Plus, we're going to throw in that added jump scare at the end and leave the question mark. Is he really dead or is he not dead? And that's why it can survive.
It's not the most difficult question. We know that there's money to be made. He will still be alive.
Yeah.
Question from the chat room, Rob. Which Friday the 13th movie is the best one or your favorite? You answer, then I will answer.
So I did see Friday the 13th in person. I was 12 years old when the summer that this movie came out. And I should not have been seeing it because it was R-rated, but it was the 80s.
Lawbreaker!
And it was 3D. So there was something cool about this one. The one that and it might just be, I hold the most fondly is the next one. Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. Because when it came out, we really thought there was going to be no more Friday the 13th movies.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
And it had a young Corey Feldman in it. And Corey Feldman does this great thing where he shaves his head towards the end of the movie and tries to make Jason think that he's the younger version of himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I don't know, it's just clever, right? And so for some reason, that movie has always stuck with me. I think story-wise, the second one is the best one. And the final girl is most developed in the second one. So I would say it's probably 4, then 2, then 3 for me. But you got to talk about number 3 because it's the iconic one. It's where he gets that mask, and that's the thing that matters the most.
I think my favorite one, I have a soft spot for people who are just trying to make a movie and find a way to write a movie they can make in a short amount of time and just get on the scoreboard. And to me, that's what Friday the 13th Part 1 was.
Mm-hmm.
They clearly, that is, you've got an isolated set, probably don't got to pay for a lot of permits.
Nope.
Pretty much you find an actual camp somewhere, and you know, it's got places for people to eat, places for people to sleep. It's already built in. So really a lot like Paranormal Activity. Working your budget limitations into the milieu. In Paranormal Activity, it's like, well, instead of writing how to not see the camera all the time, just put the camera in all the scenes. We'll write that into the script, and then there's no outtakes because we actually have a camera or actually have a boom mic. Real simple stuff they were going for, and it wound up being successful. So Part 1 to me is, look what it launched. Just Part 1 launched all this stuff.
And it would be like writing a movie that happens in a closing down mall, knowing that there's 50,000 closing down malls all over the country that you could rent for cheap and do a one location shoot. What a great freaking idea that would be.
Let me go. We're going to talk about that for 1 second. Let me go back to main. I got to figure out what this is. Guest cover. Now go back to guest.
All right. While you're doing that, I want to say one more thing about Richard Brooker, who originates, the number 3 Freddy. Geez, I'm on Freddy Krueger now. Jason Voorhees, right? So he only acted in a couple of movies as well. He quit and became like a tech manager, an independent producer. He was a big cricket guy, and so he used to produce a lot of cricket shows for international markets. But he also directed dozens of episodes of Bill Nye the Science Guy. So I would just like to point out that Jason Voorhees followed the science and wore a mask. So thank you very much for that, Jason Voorhees.
I see. Jason's been leading the cause all along. You've probably done it.
Long time.
Rob, we have a very leading question from a real girl in the chat room. Can you tell us more about Mall Pigs without giving away the plot too much? Tell people what we've been working on.
All right, so Mall Pigs is a story about an American mall that is dying and the very slacker security guards that work there. And one day a mysterious crate gets delivered and unleashes an untold evil in that mall. Mm-hmm. And so the mall security guards that call themselves Mall Pigs, as well as the elderly mall walkers and the store owners, all have to band together to beat this evil before it kills them all.
Or it kills them all.
And there you have it.
And this is just like I said with Friday the 13th, which Rob picked up on the original Friday the 13th. There are now thousands of malls that are either on their last legs or shut down. Some that have almost no stores actually open, but still have power, still have people coming in. And this is one of those things. You see a mall and you think, oh, that's a big expensive process to shoot in a mall. But now Rob and I are looking at these locations are available all over the place, all over the country. If we can find investors for the movie, it should be pretty easy to go find a mall somewhere, set up and shoot and keep the budget down. And this is our first screenplay together. So the goal is keep costs down.
With power, with working bathrooms, and work with something working in the food court, so that can become catering.
Yep. Yeah.
The whole movie will happen in one location. It's pretty smart, if you ask me.
It's in the business. It's called a one location shoot, and every scene we wrote for this movie, except there's a rec league thing going on, which we won't get into too much. But everything takes place in the mall, and hopefully, if we're able to get this to go somewhere down the road, it's a mall that's on its way out, so we can just break stuff. It'd be fantastic.
And line producers, who are the ones that really keep track of the budget, they love hearing phrases like one location shoot. They're very happy about that.
Yeah, yeah. And Rob, you've done catering in a couple movies. Tell us about that real quick.
Yeah, so for a while there, Michigan had a tax credit, and there was a lot of movies. This is around 2008, 2009. A lot of movies came to Michigan to shoot here. Even the Batman versus Superman movie ended up shooting here. But so we formed a catering company and started working with a number of different films, medium to lower budget ones. Kill the Irishman, Vamps, which was a kind of a similar comedy. Horror movie with Alicia Silverstone, that kind of stuff. But then, we got a different governor in office, and the first thing he did was get rid of that socialism stuff. So we got rid of that. And our entire industry here in Michigan, which was flourishing, and a lot of money, and a lot of people were saying nice things about Michigan, went away. Immediately after, Georgia and Louisiana both did the same kind of tax credits that Michigan was doing. Pay attention to how many movies and TV shows you see have that Georgia peach at the end. A lot of stuff shoots in Georgia, and it's because they get big tax breaks, the exact tax breaks that Michigan was one of the first states to do and then got rid of. And I'm not salty about it at all.
And, having lived in Michigan my whole life, one of the things that was appealing to producers and directors was you could find any set you wanted in Michigan. Do you want to buy an entire Main Street for a week? There are many small towns that have completely fallen apart and have almost no businesses. You could walk in and dress that up. Malls, for example, deep woods, vast vistas, like Czechoslovakia-esque vistas. Michigan kind of had everything you could want. Major metro.
All four seasons.
Yep.
We've got giant lakes that can look like oceans. We have sand dunes. We have forests. We have cities. We have everything you need. It really is an excellent place to shoot a movie. And the industry just died that day. Just died.
Well, that's the way it goes. Rob, that is our half hour. I've enjoyed quite a bit talking about this major league monster. This is, it's hard to think other than maybe Saw for another monster to have had the box office success of Jason Voorhees. I didn't tally it up, but it's a lot of goddamn money. I can tell you that.
No, and even though, Friday the 13th was essentially a take on Halloween, right? They saw Halloween, we're going to make Friday the 13th. Right? It was a direct result of how well John Carpenter's Halloween did. Halloween doesn't have the staying power, not nearly the same number of films, and it's printing frickin' money to do a Friday the 13th movie. And Jason Voorhees and that iconic hockey mask is a huge part of it.
Rob, thank you for being on the show. As
always a pleasure, Scotty.
You bring an enormous amount of knowledge, and you're awesome. And we will see you in a future StorySmack.
Sounds great, buddy. Thanks for everything, man.
Later, Gator. Go back to Maine. That also was a sound that was constant throughout my growing up, my teenage years, into my 20s, hanging out with Rob and Dan Baker and a bunch of our friends, that when we did a lot of parties that were out in the backwoods, a thing we would call two-tracking, because in Michigan, you would get in trouble if you go to drink at a certain place. So you would go on these backwoods paths where there isn't even a road. It's just two ruts into the woods. That's why we call it two-tracking, with grass on either side and grass in the middle. And invariably, throughout the night, either Rob or myself would slip away from the crew and just kind of Homer Simpson back into the woods, and then wait for someone to walk away from theirs and come out and go, kill, ka, 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 and watch people just crap themselves. It was very scary back then. It's probably still very scary now. Once again, let's go over our guests that we have coming up, you guys. Look at this lineup. It is a murderer's row of monsters. Next week, we'll have the bad astronomer himself, Phil Plait, PhD, the giant ants from them. The week after that, Rachel Burks is going to tell us why the Cookie Monster is so psychotic. After that, one of my favorite monsters ever, a hodgepodge monster, The Thing, from John Carpenter's remake of The Thing. Actress Rachel True of The Craft will be on the show with us, also Half-Baked. Wonderful, wonderful human being. And then finally that's 9/13, not 8/13, excuse me. Author Amanda Diebert, comic book, awesome author. We're going to talk about Medusa from Clash of the Titans. It's going to be great. That is it for this week for Monster of the Week. I still don't have a tagline. I'm going to have to work on a tagline for this movie so I can say goodbye. But for now, I will say goodbye to all of you. Thank you for watching Monster of the Week. And we will talk to you next week. Insert your tagline here.